Welcome to Next Level Thursday, sponsored by the Rental Property Owners Association and hosted by me, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group. If you've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor podcast, you know that since 2016, we've been bringing you a Monday episode every Monday. And we've done over 400 episodes. We have over 2 million listens, and it's been a huge success. We've decided we're going to push even further, add even more value, and that's what Next Level Thursday is all about. Very quick bites. We're going to share insights from myself, my partners, other listeners perhaps. And today, for the very first Next Level Thursday, I am going to focus on FEMA and the FEMA flood maps. So if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say FEMA, FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Why is this important to you as a real estate investor, and why should you include this in your due diligence process on whatever investment property you might be buying? It's because the flood map that FEMA puts together is often used by insurance agencies and lenders to assess risk. And I will give you a quick example. I bought a property back in 2014, a large apartment complex. The corner of one of the 11 buildings, apartment buildings on this property, was in a flood zone A, according to the FEMA map. Because of that, and even though this location had never flooded and hasn't since we bought the property, we still had to pay an additional $15,000 a year for flood insurance on this one little corner of the building. An outrageous price, and we really fought it tooth and nail, and that's a different story. All right, so I'm going to take a few moments here to show you how to access the FEMA flood maps. And the first thing you want to do is go to FEMA.gov. That's FEMA.gov, G-O-V. You can click on the flood and maps, and you can go to flood maps, National Flood Hazard Layer. Let's take a look at that. Go into the FEMA's Map Service Center, and I can actually type in an address. So I'm going to type in Grand Rapids. So here's the thing about the FEMA flood map. You got to play around with it to get to the right view. This view obviously isn't working because I can't zoom in. So I'm going to go to the NFHL viewer. So if you're looking at the screen on YouTube, you can see what I'm talking about. If you're not watching this on YouTube, that's okay. I'll just describe it for you. You have what looks like a normal Google map on the right-hand side of the screen. But as you get toward the center of the screen, which is where the Grand River is running through, you start to see different flood zones. So I just brought up a legend here, which helps kind of explain what the colors are on the FEMA flood map. You can see the special flood hazard areas are in blue, or they're checkered between blue and kind of a salmon color. Those are 100-year flood plains. If you own a property that is in a 100-year floodplain, that probably means you're going to have to consider flood insurance, depending on what your lender requires. You have other areas of flood hazard, which below are like 1% annual chance of flood. Scored areas mean different things. I'm not going to go over all of the meanings. The FEMA flood map's kind of fun to just play around with it, see what properties you own. If you own any properties, whether they are in a flood zone. A couple other things to mention. One is that if you are in a flood zone, and you don't believe you should be in a flood zone, it pays to work with your surveyor to do what's called a letter of map amendment. And this would be going back out, surveying your location and determining if it truly is in a flood zone area, because you can push back on FEMA's designation. Now, if you hire a surveyor who knows how to do this and you go and find out you're still in a flood zone, you can do what's called a letter of map amendment, which would basically involve bringing in fill dirt, raising your elevation if possible, and then thereby sort of building your way out of the flood zone. So that is a possibility. The other thing that I want to make sure I mention is that if you already know you're in a flood zone, and perhaps you're already paying insurance because you are in a flood zone, go back and double check, because FEMA is revising their map, and they have revised their map here in the Grand Rapids area. The property I told you about, where we're paying $15,000 a year, it is no longer in a flood zone because FEMA changed their map. It was $15,000 when we started. Somehow the cost went down to $10,000 over the years. But that's $10,000 now that we don't have to pay in flood insurance because FEMA changed their map and we are no longer in a flood zone. I hope this was helpful. I want to keep these Thursday episodes quick. Just want to provide value and knowledge. FEMA Flood Zone Maps, make that part of your due diligence process. Check out the RPOA's website at rpoaonline.org, and we will see you next Thursday. Thank you.